that dance break was better than coffee. I don't think I've ever seen such energy. So kudos to the dancers. I would not have had your confidence, to be honest. So I'm Neama. I lead the audiences product at AppsFlyer. And today we're going to talk about how you can kind of drive growth using remarketing strategies and using audience activation. So we're going to cover 3 topics today. We're going to talk about why you should be remarketing. And for those that already are, maybe you'll learn some key insights as well. We're going to talk a little bit about what AppsFlyer Audiences can do for you. And we're also going to go through some key use cases so you can get an idea of really how this can apply in the real world. We'll also take, if we have a few minutes left, a Q&A. And I'll also have Carlos Palma join me to go through the use cases and get his insights on how BPI and, from his past experience, how he's using audiences to do that. So let's dive in and talk about the importance of remarketing for higher user engagement and increasing conversions. So being a mobile marketer in 2025 isn't easy. Everyone in this room knows it. The last few years have gotten increasingly complicated in the ecosystem. There's more competition than ever, and the stats are really eye-opening. To maintain retention rates and prevent churn is just so difficult. You have 50% of users uninstalling within the first 30 days. You have 85% of users who add something to a cart, never to come back to it again. And you have 40% of apps that are downloaded and then never used at all. What's the most painful in these scenarios is that you had users who showed interest, who had intent, and it's so easy to lose them. And that's really the biggest hurdle we face today. So let's talk about how that increased competition is especially affecting the Philippines. So in gaming, and this graph is for gaming, but we see the exact same trends among non-gaming, year-over-year retention rates are falling. It's going down across all post-install dates, across all platforms, and you're even getting to a scenario where for day 30, retention rates are dropping below 1%. That's just incredibly painful as a marketer where you're spending so much budget to bring these users. So what can we do as a marketer to keep users engaged? And the data shows a very clear picture. Brands that are investing in their user engagement strategies are seeing the benefits in revenue uplift and higher user loyalty. 90% of app users who are engaging with an app once a week are definitely likely to become long-term users, and that's what we're after. So by investing in consistent and value-driven remarketing strategies, you can generate more revenue from users that you would have lost otherwise. But creating these kind of strategies isn't easy today. You have many pain points around this, let's say, topic. There's a lot of manual work involved. If you have an analyst, you're basically begging the analyst to get those data points for you. You're taking all of those lists, sometimes exporting from a CRM, sometimes breaking those files into multiple different pieces, and then going to every single network and every single partner and uploading those files. That's just not scalable and definitely not to the level where remarketing can become effective. Not only is the process itself painful, but it's also very difficult to measure results. How do you know that your marketing dollars are going to the right place? Is that remarketing actually bringing any uplift at all? And not to mention, creating those user journeys is very difficult, making sure that your users are being redirected to the proper place. So let's talk a little bit about AppsFlyer Audiences and what it does in a nutshell. So we're talking about a one-stop shop for remarketing and audience segmentation management. You're going to be able to create those audience segments directly within the UI in the platform, but you can also import your audiences from your other partners, from your analysts, one-offs, into the platform and have all of your audiences managed in one place. Once you've configured those audiences, you can also connect them to over 140 different partners. And when I say partners, I'm talking about networks like Google, like TikTok, and also your CRMs, your Mongages, your Brazes, and basically managing everything in one location. It also makes it super easy for you to test new partners, which you should definitely be doing because your competitors are also there. And once you have everything connected, you can also use audiences to kind of measure the incremental uplift that's running through those remarketing campaigns. And I didn't touch upon it, but the most important in today's world is also that AppsFlyer Audiences is going to ensure that you're 100% privacy compliant, which is so difficult to do nowadays alone. AppsFlyer has you covered in that respect, and you're also able to control which data you're passing to which partner. You might not want to send your hashed email and hashed phone to everyone. It's important information. So let's talk very, very briefly about what are the steps needed to kind of set up those audiences, and then we'll start getting into some examples. So the first step is to configure your audiences. You're gonna wanna think about an end goal, what you're trying to achieve, and then you're gonna break that back into pieces, and we're gonna do that together in a few seconds. But the first step is to configure the segmentation. The second step, after you've done that, is to understand if what you set up previously is actually correct. Let's say you've thought that these are the right rules, but the audience size is going to be estimated at very small, very limited. This tool, where you see the visualization, is going to allow you to kind of be dynamic and play and understand how to get to the right big enough audience size to really ramp up those strategies. And the next step is going to be very simple to connect to those partners we talked about, the TikToks, the Googles, the partners, and have it all be done automatically. Once you kind of set up this process, you don't really need to touch it again unless you have something new you want to test. Steps 4 and 5 are around kind of optional steps. You have the ability to also split test your audiences. So once you get kind of more advanced into remarketing, you might want to test. Is Google better than TikTok? Maybe TikTok is better than Google. Let's split test and find out. And then you could also measure the incremental lift. That's step number 5, the measure. So now I'm gonna invite Carlos Palma onto the stage. He's the Assistant Vice President for Platforms Marketing at BPI.
Hi, Neama. Hi,
Hey,
good afternoon,
Carlos.
everyone.
Thanks for being here.
No problem. It's my pleasure.
So Carlos has a lot of experience, both through BPI and for the last 15 years in this field. And so he can really give us his insights into how he's used and is using audiences to kind of drive performance. So we're going to go through a few use cases today, just 3. We're going to talk about retargeting high-intent users who haven't completed their journey. We're going to talk about how do you drive those high-value upsells and cross-sells. And we're going to talk about maximizing LTV while optimizing towards CPA. So let's go into the first. We're talking about retargeting high-intent users who didn't complete their journey. So this is probably the classic case you think about when you think about remarketing. But like we're going to show, this can get very advanced. So let's go into a pretty simple example, and all the use cases I'm going to present are going to be for the financial vertical. But the same can be done through multiple industries. So in the financial vertical, form abandonment is a serious challenge. You have 75% of forms that begin and do not complete. So those forms are very difficult. They're like account setups, loan applications, credit card requests. You have tons of steps in that process. It takes a long time, and it's very, very easy to lose users along the way. So what it really presents is an opportunity to bring back and re-engage those users who've already shown interest and intent. So let's kind of role play creating that segment together, and so you can see how easy it can be. So my end goal is to bring back form abandoners. So I'm going to start with taking all users who've initiated the form. That's kind of the top circle. Anyone who's begun the form. Then I'm going to look for anyone who has not completed the form. Okay, and these are different events that are already set up within AppsFlyer. The intersection is going to be any user who started the form and didn't finish. Once we've kind of defined the base idea, we can also get a little bit more complicated and start to define timeframes, last 7 days, but we can get more advanced and into personalized messaging. Let's say, do you want to hit someone who abandoned after the first stage of the form with the same creative you abandoned at the last stage, where they have one more click left to activate their account? Probably not. Different messaging will probably be more effective for you. And so you can get pretty advanced into even this use case, depending on the effort you want to put in. So once you've completed it, you're going to push the audience like we talked about. But here, I'd also get your phones ready. After each use case, I'm going to ask you a little Slido question to see how you guys are handling remarketing. And at the same time, I'm going to ask Carlos what he thinks as well. So we'll start with the Slido, so I'll let you read for a second. So what's the biggest blocker to running more abandoned journey campaigns in your org? So Carlos, at BPI or previous roles, kind of what abandoned journeys were the biggest opportunities for you guys?
Oh, so thank you. While people are answering.
Yeah, while people are answering.
Let me share from 2 experiences, one from BPI and one from my previous FMCG role where we're heavy on e-commerce. One of the bigger opportunities to remarket was when people. So we would have deals. It was pretty common to have double-digit deals. It was a fad especially during the pandemic. People wanted to save, so people were adding stuff to their cart. But we saw that even our highest or best-selling product, despite the good deal, would be left in their cart. And you've already talked about how 85% leave things on their cart. So we were wondering, why were people leaving things in the cart? And one of the things that we saw by looking at the different journeys, by interviewing our customers, was that the deal alone wasn't enough to kind of drive them to convert. Because what they would do is the e-commerce space was such a competitive space that people would compare prices despite the deal. So you would see people checking out Lazada, Shopee, even Watson's, even other e-commerce platforms, because all I guess retailers were getting into the e-commerce space during the pandemic. And what we saw was that it wasn't enough that you had the best deal. People started bundling things. So what we did was remarket to people who left things in their cart, especially the best-selling items. And what we did was we actually created deals specific for those who abandoned using the best-selling products. And then we served that ad, and we saw a almost 95% conversion for people who left those things in the cart. So that's an example of how we leveraged remarketing, or an opportunity where people were leaving things in their cart. For BPI, one of the challenges of being a bank is that, and we all know this as Filipinos, is that it takes a lot of IDs to open a bank account, or you need an ID for an ID. So the cycle is endless. One of the things that we realized is that a lot of people were dropping off signing for an account. So there is intent, because you would need to download the app, and then they would get to the part where we would ask for their ID for KYC, and we see the drop off being really high. So again, finishing forms. So what we did was we already kind of created a segment or an audience specific for people who dropped off with IDs, and started feeding them specific ads for specific IDs. So a lot of Filipinos don't know that certain IDs are accepted, because it's usually in a list, and reading comprehension is not the best in this country. So we always see people just reading maybe the first 3 bullets. So we would actually run ads with specific IDs to really drive and see which IDs were most converted, which IDs would actually get the most clicks, and that's how we got past our hurdle.
So you've seen huge increases in conversion rates by using the audience segmentation in combination with this kind of personalized messaging and that kind of advanced segmentation strategy, it sounds like.
I think yes. So it goes hand in hand. You can't just create an audience and just have a generic message. So it defeats the purpose of having or knowing that audience. So might as well just run generic awareness campaigns, run it via black box, run it via whatever partner you have. So I think as marketers, our role is not really to just come up with a media plan or come up with things that will run it, but also look at it from the analytical side of things, where we kind of look at what's best for my business. You guys know your customers best, and sometimes the data would support that, sometimes the data doesn't, but it's understanding how and looking at how you can transform that using the tools that you have to something that you can use as an advantage.
Amazing. And so let's take it out. Let's check what the biggest blocker is. So we're seeing limited access to data with 44% common issue, too complex to segment and identify the right users. So I would say, just to quickly address them, limited access to the right data is actually not a unique issue and very strong. And actually, Carlos and I had a long discussion about this yesterday. Limited access doesn't mean no access to the right data. So BPI, as a financial institution, is very limited in the data they can send, but they're able to run these kind of advanced remarketing strategies despite it. There are workarounds. It's all about maybe sending a flag instead of the exact figure you're looking for. But it's all about planning that out before you create those audiences. Okay, let's move on to the next use case. So we're going to talk about how are you going to drive value from existing users? How are you going to drive high-value upsells and cross-sells? So this is especially a huge growth lever, not only for finance, but for any app that has multiple products. You have a huge wealth of information on your customers. You know what they like, what they don't like, what they have a propensity for. You could be using audiences and advanced segmentation to really drive that revenue and that uplift further. So acquisition costs are so high as well. Why are you not, we should be leveraging our existing first-party data more, and then we can also lower our costs. So let's go into a specific example from, again, financial institutions. So it could be that driving loans as a strategy for my bank is a major revenue stream. And I already have a user base that I know a lot about. How can I create a segment that's going to contain only qualified users, only users that have a high propensity? So let's take a look. We can create an audience segment that's going to include users who have a basic credit card, one event, that has a high monthly spend, so they're qualified, and they're active credit card users, high propensity. And the intersection, that's what's gonna land me the most valuable audience segment that I can then use to cross-sell my products. So the best method in general when you're kind of going after this use case is not to treat it as just another funnel strategy. You wanna instead use this as a means to kind of foster deeper engagement and stickiness. So again, we're going to do a quick Slido. I'll let you have some time this time. So which signals are you currently relying on to identify users for upsell or cross-sell campaigns? And we can lower the music. Well, I can ask Carlos the same question. How are you understanding which signals are the best to run these campaigns?
So it's very funny because we integrate both traditional website behavior with app behavior. We tend to look at who are checking out loans pages, who are checking out credit cards, who are checking out deals. And then we take a look at that data and then we integrate it with people who are always checking your balance, who are people transferring out money via interbank transfers, or who's using our pay to merchant feature by scanning QR codes. So these are opportunities all that tells what is the financial capability of a client, and then we reclassify them as potentially pre-approved credit card holders so that we can serve a pre-approved credit card ad to them, telling them that credit card application is actually very, very easy, very fast because they're pre-approved. We can also look at people who are looking at cars, loans, and then integrating that with offers by giving them a landing page where they can actually apply for a loan or inquire for a car loan or a housing loan.
It's especially important with the limited data to kind of rely on that in-app behavior as well. So it sounds like it's the same for all the users. You guys are relying on the same metrics, so you should be able to do it extremely effectively. So let's go on to the last use case, which is going to be around maximizing LTV while optimizing your cost per action. So in this case, retention, like we talked about earlier, and you've heard from many other speakers today, retention is going to be a major challenge, not just in finance, everywhere. And with low switching costs and high competition, users are going to drift to other platforms if they're not actively engaged. We also know that acquiring new users is extremely expensive and more costly in the long run than kind of re-engaging your existing ones. So let's start by understanding how we can segment those high-value users that we already have, that have already shown a huge interest in our product, but who've recently become inactive. How can we prevent churn before it sets in? So let's, again, kind of role play out how we could create this kind of audience segment. We want to re-engage, again, customers with a strong, let's say, deposit history, but they haven't had any recent engagement. So we can take previously active users who've had high deposits and haven't had any recent deposits. So those are kind of churn signals and understanding that someone has maybe soft churn tendencies, but maybe we can save them before they turn into hard churn and they've already settled into your competitors' products. So the focus here is going to be to target them with messaging, to nudge them back into those kind of high-value actions like deposits or investments. So last question. Oh, it's the next one. But in the meantime, until we have the right Slido on, if it's possible, Carlos, maybe you could tell me a little bit about acquisition, because up till now, we've been talking about audience segments for re-engagement. But I know that at BPI, you guys have had a lot of success with lowering your acquisition costs and lowering your CPAs by using these kind of same audience segments. Maybe you can tell us a little bit about it.
Sure. So one of the challenges of being a bank is we have bank secrecy laws and data privacy laws. So we're not able to use our depositor data as a first source of first-party data. Imagine having 12, 15 million emails, customers available for your use, but you're not able to use it for remarketing or retargeting so that you can use it for acquisition. What we've done is we've actually worked with AppsFlyer to kind of build a new set of audiences, and then from there segment that and break that down even more to people who are more likely to open a bank account, whether it's a new bank account, another bank account, whether it's opening a non-deposit bank account, non-deposit account, which is a loan or a credit card. So we've circumnavigated a lot of the things that we are not able to do by working with a company like AppsFlyer and using the tools that is available. We are pretty early engaged in a lot of the remarketing, just because that is the main option and tool for our acquisition strategy, and I guess that's where we're at.
Yeah, amazing. So I think that is the wrong slide, but we'll go on from there. And I think that's it for today. If anyone has any questions, I think it's better if you if you come and approach me in the break. We're a little bit over on time, so I don't want to take too much of your time. But thank you very much, and you guys were great, really. Thank you. And thank you for the dance energy. That was amazing.
Thank you, Nina.